Okay, welcome back. In the last video segment today, what we want to talk about are how do we choose our channels? Now, our channels are chosen based on a variety of factors, the most important of which is our market. Who are we selling to? Where do they want to buy? How often do they want to buy? How do they want to buy? All of those questions impact if we're going to do it direct, if we're going to do an intermediary, is it going to be an electronic distribution? How does it work? Okay. We also have to ask ourselves questions like, is this a consumer or an industrial product? We take into account the geography and the size of the market. Is this a concentrated market or is this market spread out over large tracts of land? All of those factor into how we distribute. Okay. If we're spread out, if we have a few customers spread out over a lot of real estate, we're probably not going to use a retailer. We'll probably use something else, a mobile approach, for example, for distribution. Okay. Our product, the more complex, the more customized, and the more expensive the product is, the more likely we are to use a direct channel because we need to explain how the product works. We need to make sure it's properly installed. And because of the cost value, we're probably not selling a lot of them. So we can afford to do a direct piece. And last but not least, we don't want to give up our goodwill by turning the product over to somebody else who might do something wrong. The next piece is our product factors, the level of complexity. Oh, we already talked about that. No, level of complexity, we should also mention. More complex, the more we have to do. And stage in the product life cycle. The longer a product's in the product life cycle, the more intensive the distribution, because at that point we're into the laggard stage and we're just trying to wring every last penny we can out of that product. All right? The producer portion, more users equals a lower probability of a direct channel because we can, with more users, we can use an indirect channel to get to them, okay? And if the producer wants more control over everything, they're much more likely to do a direct piece rather than letting it out, especially if they want control over price, the way it's displayed, all those types of things. Where we're seeing that in retail today is where manufacturers are essentially buying space from retailers and setting up shops within the store because they weren't happy with the way the retailer was displaying the merchandise before. Cosmetics companies have always done that, but now we're seeing that in clothing and in appliances as well. Samsung's just starting that with Best Buy, I believe. Okay, 3 types of distribution that we can work on. Number 1's intensive. You get intensive distribution if it's a convenience product. You've got lots of consumers and they're spread relatively evenly throughout, okay? Intensive distribution would be somebody like we talked about Subway. That's an intensive distribution. Selective distribution, we have fewer consumers or fewer users. They're spread out over a larger area, so we may have only a couple of places to draw people into. Okay, so fewer number, larger area, we draw them in. And then exclusive distribution. Exclusive distribution is when we have a very unique product. And it's basically a demand-oriented product. People need to come to it. Rolex watches use exclusive distribution. They pick usually 1 or 2 jewelers in an area that can sell the product. And what they do is they force the consumer to go to those. Okay, so that's where we start to see that. The last thing we want to talk about is the concept of omni and multi-channel retailing or distribution. And what we're finding today is, unlike what we thought was going to happen when the dot-com boom started, and even though the press today with Sears just announced another 40 some odd stores closing, that it's the end of traditional retail as we know it. It's doomed. It's doomed, I tell you. Well, it's not, okay? What we do know is we now have multi-channel retailing. And if you want to be successful in retailing, you better be mobile-based, have a bricks and mortar presence, and find other ways, whether it's vending machines, or some other method to get your product out. Guess what? Amazon's figured that out. What's Amazon busy doing right now? Opening physical stores. Why are they doing that? Because they've realized you can't sell everything online. Some stuff, if you want to get it to the consumer and provide that place and time utility, you've got to have a physical store so they can walk in and pick it up. Because we can't have Amazon warehouses every 200 miles in the US that stock every product they've got so that you can order something at 9 a.m. and have it by noon. It just doesn't work like that. Unless Mr. Scott's got the transporter working, but last time I checked with the bridge, that wasn't happening. So now what we're seeing is retailers are coming up with omni-channel. That gives the consumer the same experience across all the channels. And that's where we're headed, is omni-channel. Right now I've got multi-channel. I'm selling online, I'm selling offline, okay? And I might have a third one. Maybe I'm doing some direct. But each one of those is different. The consumer sees a different feel. Now we're moving towards omni-channel. So it's seamless, whatever way the consumer decides to buy. If they're buying it on their mobile phone at 2 in the morning, or they're standing in the store, or they're at a kiosk in an airport somewhere. Doesn't matter. It's the same experience. And that's where we're going through. Okay? That concludes the chapter on supply chain and channels. Next up, retail. So you have a good day, and I will see you tomorrow to discuss chapter 14.